welcome to Council Preview. I'm Tom Laux, and we're back here within a week. Why so short? It's because we got the Christmas vacation time right around the corner. And Steve Barg is here to talk about the next council meeting. We just had one last night.
We did, Tom. Good to be with you. We have another one coming up on Tuesday night, the 20th of December.
So let's hear the schedule that's going to happen, because it's more than just a council on Tuesday. Some people might want to tune into a few other meetings.
Yeah, you know, we have a little time off over the holiday between Christmas and New Year's, but we earn it right before, because typically the second meeting of the month for the council would be on the fourth Tuesday. That would be the 27th. They don't want to meet on the 27th. I get it. So here's what we're looking at. Judiciary and License, or JL as we call it, will be meeting at 5 o'clock. I understand from the city clerk their agenda is pretty short. So then the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee meeting will be at 5:15. The council meeting will be at 5:45. And Plan Commission will be at 7 o'clock. So from 5 o'clock till probably around 8 o'clock, maybe a little bit afterwards, it'll be meeting after meeting.
All right. Well, it'll be an interesting evening, and there's quite a few things even on an agenda that usually for the past several years that I've been here isn't been as large. So let's talk about 3 items that we definitely want to get to that are going to be on the agenda, and if we have time, we'll talk about more. And it's a little tough right now because we just got done with a council meeting. Yep. So you got to turn around and do this all over again. So
very quickly.
Hopefully they'll bear with us. We may not have everything. Keep that in mind. You may be watching a council meeting and say, wow, Steve and Tom never talked about that. Well, it's because things are developing at this time, just like yet last night. So I just wanted people to be aware of that. Well, let's talk about this possible restructuring. This was brought up, I believe, by Adam Fisher about a month ago.
Yeah, it was. And the idea being, look at the org chart. It's been a long time since our organizational chart has been reviewed. And not really saying it's wrong or bad, but are there ways we can find efficiency or better ways of operating? And I know one of the concerns that's been brought up to me, at least privately, is how many people I have as direct reports. How many people report directly to Steve Barg, city administrator. But now we have the big issue of development services. Are we having a problem for a reason why we can't find a director and a planner and those kind of things? Do we need to look at maybe recarving the pie or restructuring the department to be able to find the right people and make it work? So I think the Development Services Department will likely be the first piece of that, but I think it'll immediately be dovetailing into a broader review of the overall plan. And my goal here, Tom, is to get staff and council members together to really roll up their sleeves and take a look at what the best ideas might be.
All right. And, it's a way to, see what others are doing within their jobs, too. It helps see if you can actually use those employees in other areas, possibly. It's at least a good idea of seeing what's out there, even if something doesn't come to fruition over it. Is that?
Oh, yeah. And you did me a great favor by already giving me a handful of org charts from other communities. I'm probably going to look for a few more. And that'll be you never want to reinvent the wheel. You might look at another community and say, hey, this is great the way they have it lined up. They have this person reporting to him or her, and that would probably be a better fit. And maybe we ought to look at that. So you always learn from other communities. That's a great starting point. But, it's been a long time, and it's worth looking at.
Well, not to keep talking about it, but I think one of the things that our government is just getting to, that the private industry has done for many years, is how jobs have changed over the years. And I'll just bring myself into it as a news person. I had like 4 or 5 different title changes because of multimedia changing from being just a news photographer to a photo editor to a multimedia coordinator to a multimedia editor to an editor. It's happening now in the government sector because of all the things we're getting involved with that wasn't there 10 years ago.
No, very true. Very true. Good point. And also, there are ways you can do things that might be making more sense that you don't think of if you're just doing your day-to-day job. Jason Angel, who used to be our Development Services Director a few years back, he looked at it and he came to me one day and said, Steve, right now the building inspectors report to the Public Works Department. Why? And I didn't know why. And he said, because if you think about it, for me, I'm trying to attract business to the community as an economic development person. We have planners who are sitting down trying to figure out how they can design the property best. We really want to have building inspectors in those conversations right with us to say, hey, look, you can't build it like this, but you could do it like this. How can you meet code? So why would we want not to have the building inspectors in the same department as the economic development and planning professionals? So sometimes you come up with new ideas by taking a look at the org chart in a fresh way, and I think that's part of the goal here.
Alrighty, well, we'll see what happens. I know you're going to talk about a possible study and having a committee. So nothing will be decided at this point.
No, I'll be looking though to appoint a team of individuals, probably 5 or 7 members. I haven't really decided yet. It's still a little bit in advance of the meeting, but whatever number it turns out to be, to dive into this and see what they find.
Alrighty, well, let's move into this topic, which is a big topic. It's been talked about by you and I, as well as the Police and Fire Commission, a public safety referendum.
Yeah, I think people have been following us for the last half year. Tom, know that the fire and EMS operation has been having a challenge in terms of trying to get the funding it needs. We've talked about the fact that we haven't replaced 3 of the firefighter paramedics because of the budget, and there's been this issue of whether or not we've been keeping up on the receivables being no longer collectible. As people haven't paid their ambulance bills for 2 or 3, 4 years, should we really be showing it on the books as if we're expecting full payment? Probably not. So, but one of the things being talked about that has happened in a lot of communities, in fact, 20 communities went out to referendum for public safety purposes on November 8th. 17 of those, 85%, Tom, 17 of the 20 passed. And they covered everything from EMS and fire personnel to law enforcement, police officers, even record specialists in the police office, community service officers, any number of things that relate to public safety, trying to protect people and property. So what we're looking at maybe as a means of trying to help out with our EMS operation is maybe 2 or 3 different options. Maybe one is just, hey, look, we want to hire and retain 3 new firefighter paramedics. And it would cost X amount of money, and it would be an ongoing thing. You'd be agreeing to tax yourself an extra amount annually going forward. Another option might be, wait a minute, let's be more progressive than that. Let's look forward. Maybe we need more than 3, or maybe we need something in the police department too, to really look ahead to make a really big impact on those departments in the coming years. So there'll probably be a couple different things we'll come to the council with, Tom, on the 20th as ideas. And then on the 10th of January, they need to lock into just one. They need to, if they want to have a referendum on April 4th in the spring election, they need, according to our city clerk, Jessica, to have an agreement on January 10th. This is the ballot question. It will read exactly as follows. Shall the city of Marshfield impose a tax, blah, blah, blah. If they haven't got it done by then, they'll have to wait to another date, either another regular election or they'll have to have a special election to decide that.
Okay, so we're talking about council, but what about the PFC? What decision do they have in doing this? Because they have control, or I don't want to say control, but they are a big organization of the fire and police.
Yeah, we're talking finance now, so the council has the ultimate authority on this one. We're on management and operation of the departments. It really is the PFC, Police and Fire Commission, or really it's really technically the Fire and Police Commission. Oftentimes we say PFC. The reason we're waiting for them, though, and they're expected to have a meeting here shortly, is they are right in the trenches. They'll be the ones that say, hey, look, talk to the fire chief, talk to the police chief. What do you need? What if we had 2 different alternatives for the council to consider? One that called for 3 firefighter paramedics and something else. One that called for 6 firefighter paramedics and a new squad car. I'm making this up, obviously. But ideas for the council to chew on, it's the council that needs to determine which one of these, if they're going to do it, which one of these ballot questions goes forward to the public.
All right. Well, we'll learn more over the next week to 2 weeks to see what's going to happen. Big meetings coming up.
We will. By the time that meeting on January 10th is over, we will know either there's a ballot question going to the voters alongside one that I understand is going forward for the school district, or are we going to wait till another day or look at other funding mechanisms to help finance some of the ambulance operation. But
in the meantime, nothing's changing. We're going to provide those services as we always have. Correct. So people are aware of that. And right now, that's funded by what we went through in the budget here for the 2023. We're covered at this point.
Correct. Correct. We have a great police, fire, and ambulance service. I mean, our public safety here is tremendous, and they're working hard every day. The question, at least on the ambulance side, is, are we keeping up in terms of the number of personnel to be able to be effective? As the number of calls grow, I understand, Tom, that in 2022, although we're not to the end of the year, but we're going to end up with the highest number of calls we've ever had for service on the ambulance side. That's amazing. And as those continue to grow, it puts more demand on the employees.
Unfortunately, all of us are getting a little older.
True.
And,
True.
It's a fact of life. We need help if we need it, and there's more of us. that
Yeah.
are getting older. Unfortunately, that's the way it is, and we need the help.
Well, and as a result, Medicare and Medicaid, I mean, that is 2/3 of our customers. So, I mean, they're great programs for the public, Medicare and Medicaid, but when we have a patient who falls under Medicare and Medicaid, we don't get anywhere near the full amount that we bill. So that, makes it a little bit challenging to make the finances work, but we need to find a mechanism, find a plan, and work through it.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll keep everybody up to date as things happen. Definitely, possibly in a post-council news conference, if we
Yep.
have one on those,
Yep.
or another council preview or possible news release. Keep tuned to what we're doing here, as well as the city's Facebook and website.
Absolutely.
So let's move on to number 3 here. This is was discussed last night for quite some time. About appointing, well, it wasn't about appointing a committee. It finally got to that point had to do with this utility commission structure.
Yeah, Tom, this really started with Ed Wagner, our council president, who did a little bit of digging and asking some questions as to looking at the balance of funds that the utilities have. You look at their reserve funds, and it's like $33 million. And the question becomes, okay, that's great. Do they really need all those monies? Or could some of those monies be available to help the city in its general operations, the budget, and so forth? And I think our utilities are run very well. I think Nick Cum does a great job as general manager. The commission, Mike Ebro, the president, and others are on top of things. But the question has been raised, and it's a good one. Are there any excess revenues available to support city operations? Nick was at the podium, and he said this to me privately. He said it publicly the other night, too. While that looks like a lot of money, you have to take into account that a good share of those funds are committed. They're committed to either being held as reserves for the PSC when they go to rate increases. They're held in the fact that bond covenants require it when they borrow money, that they keep so much set aside. They are maybe for future equipment replacement of the things that need to be upgraded in the coming years. So they're for a variety of different purposes. So 33 million might be the number you look at, but there's nowhere near 33 million unaccounted for or accessible funds. But having said that, the question remains, is there some excess money? So the city attorney weighed in after talking with Ed Wagner, and he has given an opinion that he believes that not going backward, but going forward, it does appear possible for a city to receive a transfer of money from utilities to help general operations. So now I guess the question is what happens next? The ordinance kind of suggested that was something we were looking at. Do we need to get financial people, independent financial people, to look at it and say, look, here's how much money is really available annually after all the things that they need to withhold and keep reserves for? It may be a lot, it may be a little, I don't know, and then try to figure out what the best thing is to do. But I think these are good questions that Ed's been asking, Ed Wagner, and I think that hopefully we'll be able to come to an understanding that we can all agree on as to whether or not monies ought to be transferred from utilities to the city's general fund, and if so, what amount. Right now, I think it's kind of up for grabs.
Okay. Well, there was a lot discussed on that agenda item. Some of it, moved around and kind of get a little bit of bumps around. But I was curious if, and maybe you brought this up in your post-council news conference with Mr. Warren.
Yes.
The question I have, and it was discussed, changing the structure of the committee. Is that something totally different, as in getting a council member on as a voting member? It
is. Under Chapter 14 of the City Code, there's a 5-member board, 5-member commission, all independent, private citizens. And over the years, Tom, and I remember hearing this when I came in 2011, I was told, well, the city has a couple of non-voting members. Well, that was never put in the code. It's just informally something we've done. We've had 2 of our council members go to the meetings. They can report back and say, hey, look, they're talking about a rate increase, and I'll keep you posted. But they're not voting members. When they go to closed session, they're removed from the room because they're not part of the board, part of the commission. So it's been suggested to me off and on over time, and it's been brought up again now, why can't the council have 1 or 2 of its own members as voting members of the commission? So maybe the commission becomes 7 members, and 2 of those 7 are council members, and the other 5 can stay members of the general public. Something that suggests that we want to have some direct involvement in what happens, because they truly are part of us. I mean, sometimes we talk about Marshfield Utilities as if it's a private company. They're not. They're under the city's umbrella. We created them. We could actually uncreate them if we wanted to. So that was one of the topics that came up, is could we get direct representation from the council on that board?
Okay, well, we'll find out more about that. People want to know a little bit what happened. They can tune in to the council meeting. They can also tune in to your post-council news conference. So I bet a lot of stuff was answered there with you and Mike.
Mike and I talked a lot about it, and like you said, Tom, you said it well. There's a lot to this item,
Yeah.
and I think what's really good is to slow the train down a little bit, because you really want to do good fact finding, good analysis, and then come to a conclusion that everybody can accept before making any kind of a change if it's going to happen.
Okay. Well, we have time for a few more of these topics that are on here now. Again, as you say, Steve, they haven't been baked much here. We haven't had much time to really talk about it either between you and I or even staff, just because of the turnaround so quick. But the second reading, is that part of anything we just talked about?
No, that needs to come off.
Okay.
I'm sorry. That's been replaced by the item we just talked about.
That's what I thought.
I apologize.
No problem.
They agreed to delay that until a later date, depending upon where the financial review of the committee goes.
Okay, sounds good. But there are still a few other things on here that I think are worth mentioning. We do have a job center, and I think that's really important to mention. It was brought up during our budget. Do we have it? Do we not? We are. It's here. Let's talk about
We do, yeah, and they operate out of the 2nd Street Community Center, the former library building, and they operate as a joint venture between the city, North Central Wisconsin Workforce Development Board up in the Wausau area, and then the Department of Workforce Development in Madison. So what happens is the city provides about 3/4 of the pay of the amount to cover the part-time staff person. There's a person who works there, Tom, 18 hours a week, and the city pays. It's about $18,000 total. The city pays 3/4 of it roughly, and the North Central Wisconsin Workforce Development Board pays the other 25%. And then the Department of Workforce Development, under this agreement, they pick up some ancillary costs like phone, internet, technology, things like that, to provide supplies and equipment for the operation. So all this is really re-upping for another year, making sure everybody's on board. We're going to do this one more year. City, you pay your 3/4, North Central pay a quarter. Department of Workforce Development provide that good solid support in the background when needed, and we'll continue it another year in 2023. But one question that has come up is the lease for that space. We'll be running out here, I think, sometime soon, and then the question will be, do we want to continue the operation there? Do we want to look at something different? I know that there's discussion about other possible uses for the space, but I think we found so far Job Center has worked very well there.
All right. Well, it's in the community center, open, not sure the hours. Maybe we'll get those sometimes.
I think it's 9 to 3:30, except the employee takes a half an hour for lunch. So 3 days a week, 9 to 3:30 with a half an hour for lunch. I'm forgetting the days, but you can look it up, I'm sure.
Okay, and it's a place you can work on your resume, I bet.
Yeah, and they have people to help you. The person who does part-time work, not only does he help you get on the computer and log on and stuff like that, but he will work with you in terms of resume help and maybe some pointers. So that's a really good point on your part.
All right, sounds good. Let's talk about planning services. We're talking about a contract, it says, we haven't hired anybody on board yet.
No, but what we have is we don't have the planning staff. We know that. We're down everybody. But we've been using Bryce Hembrook, the former city planner, through a company called SEH. Well, our contract with SEH runs out on December 31st for that help. He works about 8 to 10 hours a week for us. And we pay a contract price that's $135 an hour to the company for his services. So we want to re-up for the first quarter of 2023. It does appear that we'll need it for at least that long. Hopefully not much longer.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can get some planning staff on board. But Bryce is really, he's well respected here. He knows us well after 4 years of working for the city. So we're very blessed to find a consulting firm that could offer him, or offer an employee, a former employee, to us who knows us so well.
All right. Well, I'll touch base on one thing, a wage scale adjustment. People are interested, always interested in what people make. And one thing with us, it's public knowledge. Everyone can see what we make.
This is a weird little thing, but I'm going to try to describe it, okay? If a new employee starts here, they're not eligible for the city employees in general get a wage increase on July 1st. So if the council says we're going to give you 2% for 2023 or whatever it is, 1%, that's when it's imposed on July 1st is when it's computed and added. If a new person comes on board, they're not eligible for that for 6 months. So if you start a job, let's say we have a person starts as equipment operator in the street department, and they start on April 1st, they're not eligible to get that raise that everybody else gets on July 1st until October 1st. They say, okay, they have to wait 6 months, they're a new employee, fine. But if an employee started also as another equipment operator, same job, on July 15th, they would start at the new rate. So they would start with effectively getting the raise that first person didn't get because we bumped the raise from the amount starting from here to here. Well, the person who started 3 months earlier is here still, and the person who started later is like, hey, I'm already up here, good news. That doesn't make any sense. So Tom Witzel brought up at the last Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee meeting when we were talking about compensation, why don't you make it so every single employee, no matter when they start, they get that raise on July 1st, so you never end up with a person making less than a person who started after them. And I never thought about that before, but when that gets in your head, you realize, yeah, that's a real possibility, and it would be very hard to explain. So we're going to propose that all employees get that annual adjustment that everyone gets on July 1st.
Okay. So if someone starts June 28th, will they get it?
They will. They will. Odd but true.
Okay.
The idea being that as of July 1st, everybody ought to be on the same. I mean, if you were on step one, you'll still be on step one of your scale. You're not going up a step, but you're going to be up to the rate that July 1st employees would be at step one.
Correct. That wage scale does change sometimes every year, isn't that right?
It does. Hopefully it does, because the intent of our compensation plan is that we're adjusting the scale along with people going through their steps. So if we had a job that says, like, you start at 50,000 and you work up to 70,000, well, okay, great. So I move up, every time I move up with a performance review, I move up to step 2, step 3, step 4. I get little bumps. But the wage scale ought to move. I mean, inflation is going on. Market forces are going on. If 5 years from now, well, you start at 50 and you end at 70, no, that scale should have been adjusted for market conditions, so that you ought to be getting 2 bumps every year, really. You get the general city employment one, and then you get the one, if in fact you're performing well, for your step. That you're no longer a new performer, you're now getting more proficient in what you do.
It's a little confusing, but it makes sense, and
it does.
Generally the general bump has been around 1%.
It has. It's been 1 to 2%. So if you look at that plus, a typical step increase, maybe around 2%. So I mean,
pretty common.
Yeah, and you look at right now, inflation is what, 7% or something.
Yeah.
So if you're getting 1% plus your step of 2% or whatever, for example, you're still not keeping up.
No.
But we got to make sure that we're adjusting the scale in order to keep current.
It's generally in the private sector. I think when I came from that in other jobs, you're based on merit, and your merit.
Correct.
If you're satisfactory or you're above, you're already at like a 3% or a 4%. They figured that out. So it's kind of the same. So you're somewhere in the same, probably lower on the government area, but working towards getting it better.
And one of the things about government, and I've been in government a long, long time, since I was 24 years old, believe it or not, I've been working in local government. And in good times, sometimes the private sector will be getting big raises, 6%, 7%, bonuses for Christmas, and we're still getting, 2.5 or something. But in bad times, oftentimes private sector doesn't get anything, and we're probably still getting, 2% or something like that, 1.5%, 2%. So, I mean, it does tend to even out a little bit over time. But we want to make sure that our employees are treated fairly, and we try to keep up on wages to the best of our ability.
Yep, and I was not in government in 2008. But you were, and when we had that recession, I think you're right there is what you're saying. The private industry, people that were working were furloughed. It was really a scary time.
Yeah, and I'm not saying nobody's ever been furloughed from government or nobody's ever been let go, but it's rare compared to the private sector, so there's a little bit more job security in general. But on the other hand, our wage increases are sometimes tame compared to the private sector.
All right. Anything else that you think that we should talk about that's going to be on Tuesday's agenda?
I don't think so, Tom, but I'll tell you what. We're going to start off January of 2023 with a bang. You're going to be hearing about the referendum. That'll be the final vote on the referendum on January 10th. This ordinance on the utilities is going to probably spill over into the first quarter, probably pretty far into the first quarter of 2023. We've got other challenges around the bend. We're going to try and improve our budget process to get ready for the next year already. CIP starts in January. We will definitely get things rolling after New Year's Day.
Yeah, most definitely, and I'm sure you already have plans and have talked to staff, myself included, and to help you do those goals and maintain and really change some things for the better.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about it as well.
I am too. In fact, you were at a department head meeting we had earlier today where I mentioned at the very end that I think it's a good time of year. We kick back a little bit. We have Christmas and New Year's with our family and friends. It's great, one of the best times of the year. But it does afford a little bit of time to say, okay, take a breath. What didn't I get done in 2022? And before I let it go, let's resurrect it for 2023. Let's dust it off and say, here's an initiative or a new idea that I just didn't get to because of busyness, but I want to pursue it in the year ahead. and talk about some of those ideas and see if we can't make them work.
All righty. Well, as always, I want to thank you for coming. It's been a fun year doing this.
Yeah, same here.
I enjoy doing it every time and would like to do more of it, but time is, we're both busy, and we want to thank our viewers for watching us. I wish those out there for a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Me as well, and I want to trumpet for you and David. You're doing a great job of getting the word out. And I know with the new platform and other ideas, we're going to engage more people in the public. So I also wish you a great Christmas and a wonderful New Year, and just be safe and enjoy.
All right, with that said, we will see you Tuesday night. Tune in again right away, 5 o'clock, you said, for some of these meetings?
5 o'clock for JL, 5:15 for Finance, Budget, and Personnel, 5:45 for Council, and then 7 o'clock for Plan Commission.
All righty, well, we have a boatload of meetings, and that'll be the last pretty much of the year, I'm thinking.
It will.
And then but you and I will be back on in January. And again, thanks for watching us on Council Preview.